The following pre-recorded program is sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Welcome to About Money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your hosts, the AFC team, Mike and Al, are registered investment advisors who have a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's your AFC team, Mike and Al.
And Mark. It is Saturday, and we're going to be talking about money today. We live in a world where there are many people who hated Trump and loved Biden. And there were a lot other people who loved Trump and hated Biden. Did I say that right? So personally, we may prefer one or the other, but investments, what counts is not politics, it's profits. It's not who's elected president, it's what the profits are and what the investments are. And politics just don't make profits. There's changes that happen when presidents change, and they change some of the economic things, favoring some companies to the disadvantage of others. But it's not about politics, it's about profits. And so with the election over and Trump elected, we need to focus on Trumponomics and what changes are taking place, evaluate the investments, and that's the focus of the program beginning today. But before we get to that, we want to introduce Mark Lawlett, who has started working with Adams Financial Concepts this last week. So we want to welcome to the program, Mark. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So let's talk about you for a little bit. Why don't we start with your background? Tell us about where you grew up, where you worked before getting into this business, what you've done in this business.
Yeah, perfect, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity as well to work with Adams Financial. So my life started back in 1983, born to a hardworking mother and father. Out in the Bay Area, California. We moved to Orangevale, a small town expanding Intel, which is where my father worked, in 1986. So I grew up in basically Sacramento, California, went to school out there, and then when I turned 23, joined the United States Navy. The United States Navy took me all around the world. Spent 9 years as a nuclear electronics technician on submarines, special projects, and a Navy diver. After the Navy, I stayed up here in the Pacific Northwest, the most beautiful place I've ever been, and decided to go and achieve my master's degree in finance and started working at Edward Jones, door knocking, starting to go into business and financials. Yes. Wanted to get out of the military consulting and shipyard world and decided that that's where I wanted to make earn my keep. Moved to Seattle in 2018, and that's where I ended up actually meeting my wife. We have a son on the way and our second kid. Our daughter Lennon is 2, and we live up in North Seattle area, and really looking for this opportunity to work with Mike and Al and the team and grow Adams Financial Concepts and Green Rock.
Well, thanks for being here, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Your first time on the radio?
It is.
I've done a radio program or two. Al's done a
few.
Since 2008, I've been doing the radio. It's almost like second nature. Almost. And Al's been co-hosting the program for 3.5 years, almost 4 years.
I know.
Awesome.
Time goes by, doesn't it?
It does go fast. It does indeed. So let's shift. Trumponomics. Trump made a number of promises, and if you look back in history, there's always this question about whether presidents keep their promises. But most presidents do try to keep their promises. Sometimes they can't keep them all, but it gives us a starting point. We think that presidents generally keep their promises. So the beginning point is to talk about what Trump has promised. And the first we want to talk about is $8 trillion in tax cuts. $8 trillion. So where do they come from? What are the impact?
Well, he's looking at $2 trillion in cuts. We can't talk about tax cuts when we're talking about cuts to government that he's looking to, he's got his, what do they call it? I can't think of the acronym they had yesterday for with him and Viswami, Trump, not Trump.
The Doge.
Yeah, Doge, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, right?
Department of Government Efficiency.
They want to cut waste out of the government. They want to lower corporate tax. They want a low income tax. He talked about no tax on tips, no tax on what else did he talk? No overtime tax.
Okay, but
right?
the Office of Efficiency, Government Efficiency, is different from the actual tax cuts.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
But
so let's focus on taxation.
So those are the tax cuts that he wants to make.
Yeah, he wants to cut taxes.
The tax cut, he wants to permanent the rate that's currently in, I think, 16%.
Yeah, his 2017 tax cuts and jobs act. Make that. That's a done deal. That'll be made permanent. That's easy.
That was supposed to expire in 2025.
Correct.
And that is a huge bottom line effect for all the companies.
And he wants to lower corporate tax rates to roughly 15%, and probably lower capital gains taxes.
And so, how is that going to impact the economy? What's that going to do for economy?
Well, it's going to spur growth. The problem is can he do it without incurring more debt? That's the big issue. Will the bond vigilantes come out and, countries are getting saturated with our debt. They're not going to keep buying our paper. That's the problem he's going to have.
But individuals continue to buy and institutions continue to buy.
Yeah, but they're going to get sick of it too, though, right? They're going to want to be paid for more for the risk they're taking. We saw with the 10-year Treasury start to come back down. So I don't think he has a lot of leeway in issuing a lot of red ink.
And debt can be useful as a capital structure, so allowing more leverage into the companies for a few, so it can work out.
And what we saw is, as soon as he was elected, the yields on treasuries took a big jump up.
They did.
Because the anticipation is that he will issue more debt.
And I think it's a problem. I mean, I know his philosophy is to grow his way out of debt. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think you can run a lot of red ink and try to grow your way out of it. If debt is growing faster than GDP, that's never going to happen.
But what about the economy? What happens to the economy?
As far as
tax cuts.
Oh, it's definitely going to spur growth, right? If you have lower corporate tax rates, it's going to spur more investment. It's going to spur companies to spend more money, and I think it'll definitely it will make the economy grow. There's no question about it.
So, which companies and which industries are going to benefit the most? Do you think?
I think consumer staples could have a good benefit with that. With some of these tax moves, more money in the pockets of the consumers could lead to more spending. That's kind of the simplified effect.
Sure. By having no tax on tips, that's going to put more money into consumer pocket.
Correct.
No taxes on overtime. That too is going to have anything.
I think you're hitting on the difference between real economy and textbook economy. Right? Textbook economy has been good, strong by the numbers. It should continue to be. But the real economy that people have been feeling with the increased prices over the last handful of years, that with more money will seem less and will give a kind of real economic feeling of people on the ground, people walking the streets, going out to the movies, the games, taking their kids to the game. They'll feel better about it. I think that's an important differentiation of some of these new policies.
But will it spur inflation again, right? I mean, it's definitely going to be inflationary.
Always got to pay the piper.
Yeah.
So
that's part of the cost, isn't it?
Yeah.
The additional borrowing is going to tend to be inflationary. So that was one of his first proposals. Second proposal was raising tariffs. So, especially on China and Mexico. So, what's the impact of the tariffs?
The impact will be inflationary, but I don't think that's his plan. I think his plan is using it as a bargaining tool. He's going to use it as a negotiation, a bargaining tool with China and other countries that want to just bring stuff over here cheaply. There was a story yesterday I heard on the radio about Ralph Lauren clothing company talking about how tariffs would be good for him because he builds a lot of stuff in the United States. And he said that, it'd be great for us because our products would be much more competitively priced because the tariffs would make those products even with our product.
Right.
And then, of course, they put a company in there that was a brewery that said, no, our products are going to cost more money because the import products, we import a lot of them, are going to cost more money. So it's going to hurt us.
So when you say that he's using it as a bargaining chip for China, what do you mean? Well,
I'll give you an example. I heard a story about him yesterday when he went up to Canada to negotiate a trade deal with Justin Trudeau. And he asked Justin Trudeau, he said, well, what's your biggest export to America? He said, automobile. And the first thing Trump said to him was, Justin, don't ever tell your adversary what your biggest product is, right? And he negotiated a deal with them, and he left Trudeau a little matchbox card that said, remember this deal, because he negotiated a deal that he didn't want to put tariffs on it, but he wanted to use it as a negotiating tool to say, hey, let's make a better trade deal than what we have, so things can be more equal.
So do you think it's just going to be about with China about negotiating trade deals. When you look at who he's picking as Secretary of State, Rubio is very much a China hawk. Would like to cut off all trade with China.
That's not going to happen.
Can't happen.
No.
That's not going to happen. But there'll be, I mean, China's economy is struggling, Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't afford to tell the America, flip America off and say, go pound sand. So they need to make a deal. Because if we cut them off their economy, yeah, they could cut off on certain things and stuff, but minerals, especially for electric vehicles and all that. They need to negotiate with us right now. They're hurting way worse than we are.
About Money with your AFC team, Mike and Al, on AM 1300, The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
So we're back. We started talking about tariffs, and I want to raise another point. If you look at what's been going on onshoring, if you look at the impact of that in the U.S., just looking at U.S. companies, from 2017 to 2020, 50% of the revenues from the Standard & Poor's 500 companies, 50% came from overseas. If you look at all the companies, public and private, 43% of all revenues came from overseas. If you look at where we were in 2023, the 50% had dropped to 28%. So most of the revenues that were being generated by the United States. Think about that. If you look at all U.S. companies, public and private, 24%, down from 43%. Some companies, of course, derive a lot of their revenues overseas. Coca-Cola, 70%. Boeing, a larger percentage than that. And you have companies like Starbucks or some of the fast food companies that build their outlets overseas. That onshoring is not going to do anything for that type of company. But for a lot of manufacturing, think about it. From 50% of S&P revenues to 28%. That's a big difference. That's the impact of onshoring. So with that said, what's the impact of tariffs? I'm asking the question. You guys get to answer.
Perfect. Tariffs would increase the price of what we're importing, which hopefully would give an advantage to local producers, local supply chains, which is a benefit for the companies that are doing their business in America. And, I know a famous quote of Warren Buffett. He said he's bet against a lot of things, but he's never bet against America and the companies in America.
So, I mean, if a company has widgets that they're manufacturing in China or Mexico or France and they sell for $100 and there's a 20% tariff, means the price goes to $120. So for an American company, they can raise their price. If they're making widgets for $100, they can raise their price to $115. So there's already a lot of companies that are beginning to raise prices in anticipation of tariffs.
We know from the fastest way to grow an economy. If Trump wants to grow the economy, tariffs are just a red herring. I mean, he's putting them out there in a sense, just like I said, to negotiate because he doesn't want to do them, but he's willing to do them to make the cost fair. And so he knows that the U.S. companies and the U.S. CEOs that he's talked to are going to be like, hey, you can't do this because it's going to kill our business. And so they're going to be negotiating deals, and so he knows that we want to sell more to other countries to grow the economy. We're not going to sell enough. We're not going to, no pun intended, Mike, but we can't keep giving each other haircuts. So, I mean, in the United 28% of revenues from overseas. If that keeps going down, that's not going to grow an economy.
Well, what happens is we're making a lot more things here in the U.S.
We're making a lot more things. We're making chips, right? We're making chips, but we're not going to bring everything back and make everything here to happen.
We're really looking at labor arbitrage at this point with a lot of the subsidization of the American companies being able to produce things like chips, which are produced a lot cheaper overseas when you stack that tariff and then you're subsidizing factories, the input cost, and an American company to do the same chip, you lower their cost while increasing the effective cost of. I think they're really trying to play more arbitrage because we can't win the labor game and we cannot pay less than other countries to produce the same.
So, I think about that. And then I think about why is Washington State doing so much better than Mississippi? Mississippi labor's a lot less than it is in Washington State, but it's Washington State that attracts the businesses, not necessarily Mississippi. If it was just a matter of labor cost, you'd think all the companies in Washington State would be shutting down and moving to Mississippi for lower labor cost.
No, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into that. Besides
And we've-
comparing Mississippi to Washington State,
I'll
Mike,
throw
come on.
Exhibit A if I'm saying this is the most beautiful place I've ever been and lived.
I mean,
So,
just think about it in the areas that have you got the top university in the country that draws for drawing federal grant, University of Washington, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge bonus that people wanted to come here. Then you had Microsoft, Boeing, Amazon, those companies.
But in Mississippi, they had Brett Favre.
but to your point, and Eli, man,
We can go into the sports, but that doesn't.
to your point, like we did see the last 4 to 6 years, a lot of companies move from the West Coast more inland in an attempt to save costs on a lot of taxes, reduce their tax rate, lower input costs, lower real estate costs. A lot of large companies that too, mostly California. I think Washington has lost a big company per se. Though mostly like California lost a few big companies.
California for sure lost.
Yeah.
Has lost.
A lot actually.
Washington's been growing.
Well, Washington's actually a tax wise a really favorable state to do business in, tax wise.
One of the best.
Yeah, it really is not even though it's a far left state, it's not really as bad as like Massachusetts and New York and California to do business in.
But I agree. We have a lot more of the esoteric things or the social things. Great education, cultural activities,
And you know what we have here, Mike, that we have an abundance of is water.
and water.
A lot of water.
We have a lot of water. It's a big deal. People don't realize water is going to be the new gold. It's already gotten there, right? The flow of water. We have the best water. We have the abundance of water.
Great seafood too.
You know, we have a friend who has a friend, you know, one of those stories, who bought a house in Arizona. And when they bought the house, they're in a gated community. And in that gated community, they had only a guarantee of water for 2 years.
Yeah.
And now they've been notified that there's not going to be any running water whatsoever. If you want water, you have to truck it in.
And when they build these big chip plants, nobody thinks of that, right? They think, okay, chip plant, no big deal. Well, they got to go down and drill aquifers. The amount of water those places use is astronomical. Forget about the power, that's right. But the water that they use, unbelievable.
And forget about the revenues. Look at the sustainability reports of these chip producers, and look at how much water emissions they're trying to pinch and save currently.
It's a huge problem, especially when they want to build that new. I think it's that new Intel plant was being built in Arizona, wasn't it?
I think
One
they're
of them?
trying to build them inland,
Yeah.
in Ohio, and there's not as much access to that water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Washington has water. So coming back to tariffs and onboarding, you say he wants to use it for negotiating?
Absolutely.
I think he made the promise he's going to do it.
I don't think so, Mike. I think he threatens these things all the time. I mean, he makes these statements that people like out of left field. But I mean, he'll do it if they don't want to sit down at the table and say, yeah, let's make a better trade deal. But if they want to make a better trade deal, and they need access to the U.S. markets. Most of these countries, Mexico, Canada, China, any of the countries, they're making products specifically for the U.S. and European markets. If they don't get access, their country and companies are screwed.
They're negotiating from a position of power because they do rely on us, and a lot of it is smoke, right? I mean, whether they push him to actually put those excessive tariffs on is another topic, and we'll see.
And it's like he said in the debate, though, right? Kamala made something about, you put all these tariffs on. And he says, well, yeah, I did. If you didn't like them so much, you kept them for 3.5 years because they actually worked. They worked at a certain level. They actually worked to make things a little bit more even.
And in the case of China actually reduced their price to compensate for the increase in tax.
Yeah.
You know, China is pushing steel because they overbuilt steel.
Mike,
they overbuilt aluminum.
Yeah, right. And the whole thing about the sale of U.S. steel to a Japanese company, right? That goes kind of in line with this in a sense but I don't understand because the steel market would die without this Nippon Steel buying this company. It doesn't really make any sense protecting
Well, the
that.
steel market wouldn't die.
Well, the U.S. steel market would die.
U.S. steel market is...
It already did. It's already gone.
It's not what it used to be.
That's an understatement.
But if you look at some of the modern steelmaking technologies,
Yeah.
you know, I did a whole program on steelmaking when China was undercutting everybody's price, was driving steel mills into bankruptcy. But coming back to tariffs, I believe he promised it. And when you think about think about cutting $8 trillion worth of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the offset, $5 trillion is to be offset. Part of the offset is counting on the amount of money raised from tariffs.
Oh, I know,
Correct.
but I think
If tariffs are just negotiating, that means you run up the debt.
I don't see how he's going to run those amount of tariffs on other countries and not where's the cost going to be? The cost going to be passed to the consumer. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, do you think he's going to fix a $1,000 washer and $20,000 toilet seats that are from government contractors? Because that could cut a lot too, right?
Oh yeah, that's what the Office of Government Efficiency is focused on.
If you read Musk's biography when he talks about going into dealing with NASA and the government trying to get things done, I mean, it was absolutely, ridiculous. The NASA people would be like, he needed these certain clips. And the NASA guys, well, you got to go buy them from, the government says you got to go buy them from this supplier. They're $1,500 a piece. He's like, that's crazy. He tells this guy, go find me something similar. The guy finds the exact same clips almost at Home Depot for $30.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of waste.
No, there's a lot of waste in government.
Yeah.
And
it's going to be good, I think, for the economy.
Yeah, I agree.
And there are certain mil specs that need to be hit and certain specifications in certain parts for all.
Yeah. Don't go away. We're going to return to this, talk more and more about what's coming with Trumponomics.
About Money continues. Remember the website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's your AFC team, Mike and Al.
All right, we're talking about Trumponomics.
Tariffs. Mike, you
tariffs.
You and I did a whole show a while back on deglobalization.
Yes.
Right? And so this process hasn't just started. I mean, he definitely kicked it off in 2016 because you saw all these trade deals where we were getting screwed on. NAFTA, he said, was one of the worst deals ever. And I didn't know much about it until I started looking into how bad it was. And it really wasn't a good deal.
NAFTA?
Yeah.
Compared to where we were before?
Yeah, I mean, well, and then what was the one the one with the Asian country? I can't think of what that one was called.
The TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah, but we started. China took over all manufacturing of everything. We started exporting all the manufacturing to that country.
Not all the manufacturing.
There was a
lot of manufacturing went
of
overseas.
Yeah.
A whole lot of manufacturing.
And now we're seeing this idea of more or less trade pacts, right? You got China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and India. And I think even Brazil's in there trying to form these trade pacts. And I think the United States, the same thing, right? You got the U.S., Mexico, Canada, and these countries kind of coming together, not Europe so much. They already have their own deal over there. So I think things are going to move. I think Trump's going to use things and move in that direction, making deals with these countries to say.
It's going to depend upon where his focus is and how much is America first and how much is realizing we're part of the global economy.
I agree, but I think he's definitely ran on it. If you say one promise that he ran on was an America first promise, right? I mean, look at who his voters were. There were people with younger people and the people without high education who couldn't get a job at these a tech company or anything. They don't have the skills and the education to get those jobs. Those are the type of jobs and things that he wants to bring back to his country.
And I think he definitely is an America First president-elect. I don't think he's an isolationist. I think Trump himself is a pretty big globalist. If you look at his companies, his Trump Towers, they're all over the world. I think those actions would say he's definitely not trying to isolate.
I don't know.
No, but I agree with you. I agree with you in that sense. But I think that not isolation, but I think he does with NAFTA, right? You threaten it. Oh, he's going to leave NAFTA. He's going to leave NAFTA. He's not going to leave NAFTA. But
not NAFTA.
What?
NATO.
I mean NATO, not NAFTA. NATO. Excuse me. NATO, NAFTA. But anyways, Obama tried for years to get the countries in Europe to pay more into NATO, and they wouldn't. They're just like, no, we're not. And he never put enough pressure on them. So when Trump came in and said in 2016, well, if you guys don't pay anymore, I'm going to leave NAFTA. No, they all screaming. Who was the president of France at the time? Macron, yeah. And they all went crying, and Angela Merkel and all them, and then they negotiated, and they started paying more into the fund to actually defend themselves.
We'll see.
What do you mean we'll see? We already saw.
Probably more of it, yep.
No, it's another subject we have to approach is what will the world do in foreign policy and what he'll be pressed upon.
I know, but that relates to tariffs, though, Mike. He uses everything to this guy is a negotiation.
Yeah,
everything
that's
is a
true.
bargaining chip to this guy. So whether it's tariffs, whether it's NATO, whether it's anything else, it's all going to come down to what leverage do I have and what can I bargain with, and then I'm going to use that.
And I think he will bargain with it.
He
but
will.
I think even beyond the bargaining, he's going to put on tariffs. I believe he will.
I don't doubt that he will put some on,
definitely.
but I think he'd rather negotiate better deals than do that, and I think that's his focus.
It's going to be interesting to see what he
yeah.
does with Mexico,
I know.
because that's not just a tariff deal. That's if you don't keep people away from crossing the border, we're going to put on tariffs.
Oh, and he wants to send the military into Mexico and take the cartels out, which I probably don't disagree with them. That'd be a good idea.
And that may happen. I mean, we've done that in Colombia. We may be doing that in Ecuador now, helping their governments eradicate that. So let's talk about the Office of Government Efficiency. $2 trillion taken out of the economy. Where's it going to come from?
Toilet seat refab.
No more bidets for the government.
So-
No more bidets for the government work.
So remember when Musk took over Twitter, which is
Yeah.
now X?
Yeah.
He fired all the janitors.
Didn't you wipe out like 85% of the
No, he got rid of all the
employees?
middleman and redundancy. He said they had a ton
He
of
got rid
redundancy.
of the janitors and told people they had to bring their own toilet paper to work.
It's a big cost cut.
That's a little ridiculous, but okay.
I mean, okay. But, I mean, where do you take $2 trillion out of the government?
I think they're going to go after the Department of Education, Department of the National Endowment for the Arts, things like that. They're going to cut out of Health and Human Services, but to take $2 trillion out, I mean, they're going to have to make cuts to not Social Security but Medicare. I don't think cutting Medicare, but I think they're going to look at Obamacare. They're going to look at Medicare, and they'll look at restructuring those deals and how things are done through that stuff, because there is a lot of waste that goes.
I think they'll make it more efficient. I don't think they're going to cut people's benefits though. I think that's a
58%, Mike, of all healthcare costs are run through the government. That's a lot. And there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of waste, a lot of garbage that gets put in.
Yeah, you could cut some spending in some of the foreign conflicts that are going on as well, making deals there to negotiate peace treaties and getting us out of those. That's a big expense. You could push for a lot of the DoD trimming. Musk has that experience where we talked about NASA, Al, right? Like he found that $15,000 delta on that one clip. If you do that and expand that and then scale that across all those
Yeah,
components.
then he talks about, I have to go back and read, I can't remember how it was structured, but he talked about Boeing, and Boeing would have a deal with the government for, let's say, a fighter plane. And it would be, okay, this plane's due on January 1st, 2025, and they would delay and delay and delay, and the cost would go up, and the cost would go up, and the cost would go up. And Boeing would get paid even though the costs were going up and they were delayed. I forget how he described it, but he said it was absolutely asinine why the government would just keep this contract and keep the way it is while Boeing's charging. And we saw all the scandals with Boeing charging for the tanker planes that were way overpriced and just sticking it to the government for these massive bills.
Well, and a lot of government contracts are signed. You do a bid in process, you get a final bid, and then as the project moves forward, there's changes that are made, and it's the changes that
Change
add
orders. I know,
the
but
big cost.
but that's not. Look, I got a buddy in real estate, does a lot of buildings, and he hires the contractors himself and does all this stuff. And he's okay. Well, give me your budget for the building. If their budgets are off, he said, I'm not paying your change orders. Don't hit me. Don't tell me it's $2 million to build the building and then come back 6 months and say, oh, here's change orders for another $500,000. You give me an accurate budget. And he does his own budget first. And that's what the government needs to do is, okay, what's the budget for it? And then you're not going to come back and hit me with all the change orders and then drive the cost up 200%.
Well, part of the issue is that the purchasing procurement people go out with a bid for whatever it is, and then the actual users come back and say, we need to change this and this. And so it becomes, some of the changes are from the actual users of the equipment. Some of the changes are from the builders. But I agree. I think that we'll see a lot of end to a lot of that.
Like Musk did in his factories, right? He said to the engineers, no, you're not sitting out in some office down there. I want your offices. Their offices are actually on the floor. So when the design guy goes to put whatever he's putting on the car, this doesn't work. It's not working right. The engineer can go to hey, who designed this? Well, you designed it. Well, well, Mark, come over here. Why'd you design it this way? And Musk would be right there and say, no, redesign that, get that fixed, and get it out and get it redone.
I think that point is highlighted. That I don't think it's the blue-collar style government worker that needs to be a little nervous. It might be more the executive level, higher levels that in the government structures.
Yeah, it's the middle managers, right?
The middle management's going to probably be trimmed.
Yeah,
I
significantly.
think they're going to trim government a lot.
I think so,
I wouldn't
too.
be surprised to see a third of the government gone.
In the IRS, they hired 80,000 new IRS agents. Bye-bye, those are gone,
Yep.
right? I mean, we didn't need 80,000 new IRS agents.
Not.
Probably not.
Or 80 million. I forget, they spent another 80 million a year budgeting for the IRS.
So the estimate was that they would more than pay for themselves because they could increase the number of audits and the number of people getting away with.
Why do we need any agents? Can't AI just look at it all and tell us what we owe?
I don't know.
Why?
That's
But those people will be gone for
okay,
sure.
we talk about that, right? Okay, simplifying the tax code. It's what we talked about that on the show. It's what 20,000 pages.
Yeah.
And they have write-offs. There's a write-off for a company that was started in 1932 that builds automobiles. Gee, who was that? General Motors. It's actually write-offs for one company in the tax code. Does that make any freaking sense?
No.
Zero. The tax code is so inefficient. They could wipe that out and move it to some sort of flat tax and would make more money with less. The whole IRS should be done away with.
I agree.
I'm not so sure.
Not the whole, but
I mean, if you look at some of the other countries like Italy, which has a flat tax, it doesn't work.
Why?
They've been broke
No,
time after time.
Italy's broke for a lot of other reasons because they spend money like, they've spent like crazy and their population is declining.
But if you're going to deal and take $2 trillion out, you're going to have to deal with the safety programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
It's a lot of waste in those programs. I'm not saying you have to cut. I'm not saying you have to cut benefits, right? I'm saying there's a lot of fraught waste in those programs.
a lot of fat to trim.
But I'll bet that there's going to be cutbacks as well.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Remains to be seen.
And don't go away. We're going to come back from commercial break, and then we're going to talk about the deportation of undocumented immigrants. Don't go away.
About Money with the AFC team, Mike and Al on AM 1300, The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
So welcome back. We've been talking about Trumponomics. It's all up in the air, and you have to realize we don't know for sure what's going to go on, but now is the time to really think about what's going on so that we're ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. And so if it sounds like we're just kind of fumbling around at times, we are. We don't know for sure. That's part of the game, part of the being ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. Nobody knows for sure. Only when it's going to happen. But the idea is to think about it and plan ahead and to adjust portfolios if they need to be adjusted. So we've got one more thing to cover, and that's the deportation. Deportation of 11 million undocumented immigrants. What is the impact? What do you think is going to happen?
I think there's going to be a lot of upset people.
Well, think about it this way. Some of the comments that have been made is they'll get rid of those immigrants who are taking American jobs.
No, that's false.
Depends, right? Young Americans maybe, but
I think if he can isolate the gang members and criminals that came in, like case in point, when J.D. Vance was on the interview with CNN and they were talking about Aurora, Colorado, with the El Salvador migrants. I think it was El Salvador migrants taking over apartment buildings, and the host there said, "Well, it's only been two or three buildings." And J.D. Vance says, "Did you hear yourself? Only 2 or 3 buildings taken over by migrants?" And so, I mean, if they can do that and isolate that type of problem, I think it'd be a good thing for the economy. But if they're going into factories and places where undocumented immigrants actually provide a benefit to the community economically and other ways, then that's not going to be, that's not helpful at all for the economy. First of all, for economic growth and for the community as a whole.
So I remember a while back, and I can't remember how many years ago it was, but the idea was that we had pretty high unemployment, and the idea was we could stop the migrants from coming to the state of Washington, and that way we could employ a lot more people on the farms.
No.
How'd that work out?
Number one, not many Americans wanted those jobs.
No, and they still
those
don't.
that did were pretty bad workers anyway.
Yeah, they still don't want those jobs. They're going to go over and pick cherries and apples at 100 when it's 150 degrees over there, right?
No.
They're not going to do it.
They're not going to be working in the meat cutting factories.
No.
They're not going to be working in emptying bedpans. Yeah, I mean,
our nursing homes and our assisted livings are filled with people from Kenya, from all these other countries, because nobody wants to do those jobs.
but the person who's in charge of ICE is the same guy that did go into the factories and remove people. He was the same guy that separated children from their parents.
Yeah, but the children from their parents thing's been going on for 40 years. That's not something new. That was something that was the media highlighted under Trump. And there was a story on NPR that I was listening to NPR one day, and they said they had these visual images and these things from kids in cages and stuff, right? And they realized their data was from 2015, because people don't realize that if you look for that, who deported more people. Obama deported a ton of people. He did a ton of deportation.
That's correct.
And so that's been going on. The separation of children is not only something that goes on at the border, it goes on all over in law enforcement, because when the police go into a situation, they don't know who's who. And they say, okay, these kids don't look well, let's remove them. They don't know if the parents are on drugs or whatever. They don't know the situation. Maybe their kids are being trafficked. So they don't know. So they say, let's separate the parents and separate the kids and figure the situation out, and then we can figure out a solution. So that's not uncommon.
But it was exaggerated.
It was way exaggerated, because it's been going on for 40 years.
But I mean, the number that was separated, it was a zero tolerance policy that was set forth. Are we going to say the same thing? But anyway, that's a social issue. Stay away from the social issue. Let's talk about the economic issue. What's going to be the impact?
If he, as I said, if he goes in and they're pulling people out that are undocumented but productive workers that we need first, then it's going to cause, it's not good economically, because those people still get a paycheck. They still got to go out to spend money in the community. They got to take that money in. And what's the saying? That people at the lower economic level, they spend most of their money that they make, they spend it back out.
Yeah.
So that money, whatever they make, goes right out.
So you're going to have a labor pool, though, because if you cut a third of the jobs, government jobs, you have a labor.
Yeah, but they ain't going to a chicken factory to pluck chickens. But that's how I see it going down. I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure, but.
I mean, you have a real issue with the input costs we were talking about earlier for work and labor. When you start getting rid of the lower expense labor, that maybe some of the more productive labor, to your point, right? Go ahead and put some of those government workers on a farm, and how much farm work right? And that's going to be a cost to the owner. You got a huge financial effect of just turning the ship upside down and dropping it off, right? So I think socially, you got to have a streamlined path for the good entities to be able to establish, right? Now, from a fairness perspective, our families, our grandparents, right, came here and went through the proper lines.
No, I don't think it's a question about people who come through the process the right way. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the undocumented workers.
And I think that the CEOs of those companies, Tyson Foods and Meatpacking, have a lot of sway. Are on the phones to the administration. Hey, we do have some, and this is the reason why. And the farmers who Trump was elected for, this, working class, middle of the country that voted for him, where a lot of undocumented workers go and work. I think that those people are on the phone saying to their congressmen, who are mostly Republican, and their senators who are Republican, hey, yeah, we have undocumented workers, yeah, but this is the reason we need them, and nobody's going to come and do this type of work. So I think that he's going to look for the bad apples and try to get them out of the country. I hope so.
But
I hope so.
Even how do you do that?
I don't know.
Are you going to go door to door and say,
I don't know.
Do you have a criminal living here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I'm being facetious.
I know, but your point's. You're right. You're right, and that's not. But that's not cheap. That's not inexpensive to do.
Very.
And it's going to put further strain on the workforce.
And maybe part of the negotiation is with these companies like the Tyson, like the producers that are utilizing this labor to come to the table, and they may take a quarterly hit right down to help expedite that process and clean this up. Because
I don't know.
We got to slow the drugs coming in. We got to slow the bads coming in. Right. That's I think a key.
It remains to be seen.
And we don't know if it will. Yeah.
But it's going on all over Europe. European countries are tired of all the immigrants. So
they've taken a lot more.
They've taken a lot of immigrants. Yeah.
And just because the border's closed, the cartels have been using submarines for about 60 years. So
yeah. So
it's going to be an interesting situation.
It will be.
Mm-hmm. It's going to impact investments. It's going to impact the economy. There's going to be positives. There's going to be negatives. There's going to be some of the areas in which people struggle. But let me leave you with this comment. As far as building the wall, China built their wall 5,000 years ago, and they've never since they've done that, they've never had a problem with
what?
Illegal immigrants.
Mongolians.
Well, if you want to go live there, go ahead.
It'd be a good infrastructure project, right?
My joke for the day. Have a great, that closes us up. Have a great weekend, a great week. And if it's Saturday, we'll be back to talk about money. Take care.
You've been listening to About Money with registered investment advisors Mike Adams and Al Souza. If you'd like more information about what you've heard today or about AFC's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you'd like the AFC team to evaluate your own portfolio, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The information shared in the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Saturday at noon for more About Money with Mike Adams here on AM 1300, The Answer. The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.